the two-car garage, and the decks. Changes being made to the rebuild require modification for the portions of the residence that were previously located within this interior 15-foot setback. The changes include a building height of approximately 1 foot higher. The lower level of the residence had a substandard ceiling height. Raising that ceiling results in an overall increase in the building height of 1 foot. They're also putting an eave along here where there previously was not one. There are some window changes. The master suite on the upper level is being expanded by 2 feet.
There's a change in what had been an 8-foot deep deck is now a 6-foot deep deck, and that 2 feet is added into the
results
master bedroom.
In a master bedroom expansion. Staff is asking for support of this project in that it pretty much is and qualifies for the rebuild under the non-conforming provisions of the zoning ordinance. The changes that are being proposed that require the modification simply improve the home over what previously existed with no intensification of use or impacts to the adjacent neighbor. So staff is asking for approval of this project as it's submitted.
Would you like to state your name and association with the project?
Christine Prone, architect, and I'm here with Thad and Lori McMillan, owners of the property.
Anything else you'd like to add?
I don't believe there's anything to add. No, that's correct.
I'd like to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to address the staff hearing officer on 2111 Stanwood Drive? No? Okay. I'd like to note we received a letter from... I'll open the public hearing again. Is there anybody here who would like to address the staff hearing officer on 2111 Stanwood Drive? No? Okay. I'd like to note for the record we received a letter from Ms. Paula Westbury expressing concerns with the project. With that, I'll close the public hearing. I went out to the site, visited the site, looked around the neighborhood. I actually went on the property and walked around, and I've read the site, the staff report, and I agree with staff's assessment that although this lot is rather large, it has some significant constraints. It has the property line and an existing driveway to the, I guess, south here, and then it has the existing creek, so it really is a limited area where you can build. And the additions that you're proposing and the changes to the windows and the deck, they're all appropriate improvements, and I can make the findings outlined in the staff report and approve your project. There is a 10-day appeal period, and also the Planning Commission has oversight authority of all my actions, and if they believe this raises community issue or involves issues that the Planning Commission needs to discuss, they do have the ability to call it up within that same 10-day period. And if that was to occur, Ms. Malazzo would contact you. Okay?
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. The next project is 1633 Overlook Lane. I'll give you all of this.
Yeah, I'll have them all set for you. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Hi.
Hi.
Great. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. This project site, located on Overlook Lane here, irregular lot shape, is a little over 25,000 acres and located in the E1 zoning designation, which requires 30-foot front yards and 10-foot interiors. The project site is currently under an extensive remodel, site improvements, and additions related to the residence. During the course of the process, it's appeared before the Single-Family Design Board where the original project involved conversion of the garage and then a garage replacement here with a second-story addition. Due to direction from both the neighbors and the board, the project was redesigned to keep the house in this single-story configuration back here and replaced the covered parking here, which allowed use of the existing driveway. However, this area previously qualified as the open yard for the property. The zoning ordinance asked that the open yard be behind the residence. As you can see on this property, with its proposed and underway improvements, there's lawns, terraces, patios, and a swimming pool proposed in the area in front of the house, which also allows the best spot for taking advantage of the property's ocean views. This request is to allow the garage to be located in what is the required open yard by providing it in front of the residence. Staff supports this project in that it's obvious from how the improvements are situated and how the property takes advantage of its views that this is the area that's going to be most enjoyable for outdoor recreational purposes, and because of the setbacks would be allowed to secure privacy with the form of vegetation or fencing, screens, whatever. Any support that the staff hearing officer is willing to give, though, would require that some of the outstanding violations that currently exist in this area be remedied. There's overheight vegetation in the public right-of-way right now that make visibility when exiting the property or even walking out in the street a safety issue. The vegetation in the right-of-way, which is the area clearly identified in front of this property line, needs to be removed. Also, there are height restrictions that restrict the height of any wall within the first 10 feet of this area, or within 20 feet, or 10 feet on either side of the driveway for 20 feet back. That says it may not exceed a height of 3.5 feet. It has been brought to our attention that some of this rock work that is being done here, not only that in the right-of-way, which would require Public Works encroachment permit, but the stuff on the private property exceeds the maximum height of 3.5 feet at this time and will need to be reduced as a part of any plan submitted in conjunction with this approval. So the walls that were shown on this landscape plan are shown not to exceed the maximum heights, when in actuality in the field you come through like what appears is going to be like a man gate.
Right.
They're over height. I mean, they can only be 3.5 within the first 10 feet back from this green line. What may have happened is the measurements were taken from the curb. The curb is not the front lot line on this property. This first, 10 feet area is still city right-of-way.
So there's no vegetation at all allowed?
That is correct. That is intended to be an area where the pedestrian access does not have to walk out in the right-of-way. This is almost like on a turn, and visibility is definitely dangerous.
So it's just left as dirt then?
It can be vegetation, something short, ground cover. That's fine. Most people, I think, will walk next to the curb, but right now with the height of the vegetation, you're actually walking out in the street.
Yeah, there's no sidewalk on that side of the street. It's on the other side.
Right. I had hoped by this morning to have an idea when this property is coming up on the infill sidewalk program. I was unable to get that information for you this morning, but it is our understanding that this is a neighborhood where there's lots of foot traffic, baby strollers, joggers. Doing the site visit, my safety was an issue walking around there with the vegetation looming. I was out in the street on what almost feels like a blind corner.
Yeah, they're big. They're old and big.
Okay.
If you'd like to, thank you, Roxanne. If you'd like to state your name and association with the project and add comments, I'd also like in your presentation to explain what other conforming options were analyzed besides putting the garage in the existing open yard.
Okay, my name's Tom Meany, architect.
My name is Steve McHugh, owner.
The original residence had a basement garage that was accessed from down below with a big circular drive that really had a lot of asphalt and didn't take advantage of this part of the property, which is the largest and flattest area beyond just having the best access and orientation. And so historically, this existing driveway was used for convenience because it was at the main level of the main residence. So we were going to use this, or keep this existing driveway, abandon all of this paved area, and then put the garage up in this area just for ease of convenience as a one-story solution. And we thought that, at the first pass, the simplest was to keep this as the open yard with the garage and the second floor over the top of it, and then design view people and neighbors wanted us to take a look at a one-story solution, and we brought this in as an option. They liked the solution very much. Additionally, the property to this side has a similar sort of configuration where it has the pool between the house and the street. Since we felt like it was a natural solution, one that's already been accepted in the neighborhood, that it was one that's best solution for our property.
Well, this house is pushed way back to the back property line. It really doesn't have a backyard, right?
It's
Looking on
very
the
close
aerial.
to the back.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, for these properties, it's kind of funny. The front door will be in the back, and the back door is in the front. But with the screening, landscaping along that side, it'll be natural that it will just be backwards.
Roxanne, on the archive checks, or do we have archive plans, was this approved as a driveway area? Because on aerial photos, it looks like it was actually a backyard area.
I don't think it was shown on the original archive plans.
Okay.
I don't believe it's shown either.
Okay.
I looked at the archive plans. It only has the drawing of the house,
Okay.
barely.
Okay.
It's
Old.
1951.
Yeah,
so-
old. Okay. So then, Roxanne, that answers my question regarding whether an encroachment permit was obtained. Because when I went on the site yesterday, I walked around and I came back and I asked Roxanne if she can look into what was permitted at this time. Because when I walked down here, I noticed it was higher than 3.5 feet, which is the maximum. And I've been doing this for almost a year, and I hadn't seen the modification come before me, so I didn't know if one had been previously granted or not. And so then my related question was the encroachment permit for stuff in the public right-of-way, and so there hasn't been one granted.
No, those
There
plants
hasn't.
were there. I think they've been there forever.
Well, I think I
A
was
long time ago.
more concerned within this area with the paving around the hydrant, because the fire engine's not shown on this one. But
Yeah, it's over about there somewhere.
yeah, so the paving and all the walls and
No, that was done by me, and I thought I was outside of that encroachment area. If I
Okay.
measured wrong, I messed up.
Okay, all right. I think those are my questions for right now. I'd like to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to address the staff hearing officer on 1633 Overlook Lane? No, seeing no one. We received a letter also from Ms. Paula Westbury expressing opposition to the project. Okay, I'll close the public hearing. This project actually is a hard one for me in that it has an existing area in the back that meets the requirement. And it does have this large area in the front, and as Roxanne said, it has expansive views of the city and the ocean, so it is logical that it's something you'd want to use. My concerns is looking at the neighborhood and the existing development pattern. I thought I had an aerial. I guess I don't. Do you have an aerial of the?
Let's see if I still have it.
This house, I agree. It's pushed way back to the property line, and it has its pool up front. This property is more in the central, and everything seems to be pushed to the street, which is more of a public domain. But the other thing I'm struggling with is I know our zoning ordinance allows pools in the front yard. And it just has to be set 10 feet back from the front property line. So it recognizes situations where it may be appropriate to have a swimming pool in the front yard, which kind of goes against the other provision of the zoning ordinance where it says it wants your open yard in the backyard. So if you required open yards in the backyard, then it seems like your pool would be in the backyard. So there's this kind of conflict. No luck?
I don't have anything larger than this. It's a very small.
Okay, yeah.
Was it on our
You know what, it might be in
title
the
sheet?
large plan.
Do you have an aerial photo?
Yeah, I think it
Oh, okay. There it is.
That's what I
Okay.
saw. See, Yeah, well, here's an outline. Oh, okay, let me go down here. The house to the back, neighbor, and then there's the pool. And then this property over on the other side, its house is pushed back too. I'm not sure if this is a garage or something in the front.
That is.
And then all this paving. Is this paving? Looks like it.
That's all paving.
So given the different development patterns in the neighborhood, it sways me towards that this would be an appropriate, consistent with our zoning ordinance, and an appropriate improvement. The concern I have, though, is all the work that's going on down in this area.
That can be remedied.
Oh, that's easily remedied. Yeah.
All right. Now, this has gone to the Single Family Design Board,
Yeah,
correct?
they liked it.
And this is all... The other thing I liked about your plan was the permeable paving. How far... This says non-permeable permeable paving. How far to that far?
It's currently asphalt to there.
Because of the slope, they're concerned that
It's very steep.
Yeah.
Well, not
Yeah.
very steep, but it's medium steep.
Right, okay, yeah.
Permeable paving may not stay there.
Right. Okay. Well, like I just had talked, had a discussion with myself out loud regarding the existing development pattern in the neighborhood, in that, giving the existing development on the site, that the house is set further back, although there is an open area in the back. I think it's good that you are hiding the existing garage behind the residence. Although the existing one is tucked into the house and not visible from the street, I don't know that it would be real appropriate to place a garage right in the front. Our policies point to putting garages in the back of the lot and screening them from public view. So with that, I can make the findings outlined in the staff report, but I will condition the project that any fencing or landscaping within 10 feet of the front property line and within 10 feet of the driveway for a distance of 20 feet back, and that would be true over on this site since there's an existing driveway, that it can't exceed 3.5 feet.
But once that is no longer a driveway,
This is a driveway here, so they have a site visibility issue
for the neighbor's driveway.
exiting their driveway. So we don't want to block that.
their
and-
driveway. Okay.
Yeah.
10 feet back from the green line, which is someplace.
It would be 20. It'd be 10 feet from there. So if their driveway, may become in this area, it may only be this is the issue right here.
Yeah, that was existing stuff, so I didn't change any of that. That was all there.
This is here right now.
Yeah.
Okay, because I couldn't see it from this side from walking
I just
down.
added this piece over here. All of this stuff was here. I added this side to match it, but
Okay. Well, within 10 feet of this driveway, 20 feet back, and then within 10 feet of your front property line, the landscaping and the walls cannot exceed 3.5 feet. And then I don't have any purview over stuff proposed in the right-of-way. However, you need an encroachment permit, and I'm not sure, given what Roxanne was saying, that they would be supportive of having any type of high obstruction in that area. And generally, I think the landscaping is about 18 inches.
yeah, there's no reason to. We have existing oleanders there that are, I don't know how tall they are. They're tall, 8 feet tall or something.
That'll be picked up during the plan check process through the Public Works Agency.
Yeah, so if the existing stuff has to be removed, then obviously the landscape plan has to change.
So anything we propose in there requires a road encroachment permit for any sort of landscaping? If we locate
Ground cover will be appropriate. The encroachment permit is for any of these hard improvements that were installed in the city's right-of-way.
Okay.
The rock work
The
around,
walkway.
Walkway, the low walls.
hydrant.
Yeah.
and then the
Any
low walls,
structure.
correct.
Okay. So I approve your project with that condition, and it is appealable within 10 calendar days to the Planning Commission. And again, they have oversight authority of all my actions, and they could decide this warrants further discussion before their body and call it up. And if that were to occur, Roxanne would contact you. Okay?
All right, thank
Great,
you.
thank you very much.
The next item is 350 Hitchcock Way. Anytime.
Thank you. Okay. The subject site, located at 350 Hitchcock Way, is one of the auto dealerships out in our auto park area. In preparation for a new tenant, remodel of the existing facility is occurring. During the plan check process, it was noted that a new auto display pad is being added up here in the front yard in the area that was previously used for auto display. Because this is something new over what previously existed, it was noted that it would need a modification for several items. It is parking in a front yard, the front yard, which is doubled for this non-residential use. And, it was parking in a front yard, and then the front yard setback of 20 feet, and the doubled setback of 40. The new auto display pad is simply going to be like a slightly raised platform for purposes of doing exactly that, displaying an automobile. This modification was a technical modification. Nonetheless, it did need to come through the process. Staff is supporting the request as it's submitted, in that it just continues the use with an improved situation of the auto display area that currently exists in front of the building and in that distance between the building and Hitchcock Way.
Okay, thank you.
Speaker slip.
I'm going to give it to Gloria first. Thank you, Rox. All right, if you'd like to state your name in association with the project and add anything.
Okay. My name is Bob Supernom with Stan Tech Consulting. We're the architects on the project.
I'm Carlos Viveros. I'm here with DCH.
We're in agreement with staff on this. I did bring a copy of the landscape plan.
Okay.
That was a question that had come up yesterday. This landscape plan is the same landscape plan that had been designed and went through plan check on this. The pad had been shown on this landscape plan originally. It was at the tail end of that plan check process that this pad was asked to be removed off of the site plan. But the landscape plan did reflect it, and that was what was approved previously.
Okay, so what's this line right here? It's shown on this one too. I couldn't see a number that corresponded to it. Is that right of way? Or is it?
Elevation contour? Or?
No, it's a dashed line.
Setback line is that indicated here.
What, could you scale it? Perhaps it's a 6-foot setback? The property does have multiple zoning.
And it could be the 6-foot setback for our signage. We look over having our signs set right on that line. So unfortunately, I don't have that noted on that line.
Let's just see. Peculiar distance, probably about 8 feet. I'm not sure.
And then the other question, I haven't seen this. So you're removing parking in this area, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right now this is squared off, and then this is angle parking. Is this double stacked cars then?
No. It's going to be a
What-
single stack.
So what's this area denoted? What?
That is actually noted down here as the ground cover. That's going
Okay.
in there. It's a design pattern of how he's broken up, our landscape architect has broken up the landscaping out there with the various planting materials.
Okay, so where? Okay, the other question I was trying to determine on here, I don't see the existing layout versus what's proposed. And you don't happen to have a plan that shows with you that shows what the existing parking area here looks like and what's proposed versus. And the reason I'm asking is you're asking for a modification to allow parking in this area, and this planter, I'm assuming, is getting bigger based on just visual observations, this area here from what's there now. And you're changing this parking area. So what kind of screening is this buffer between the street and the parking area getting larger to help offset the fact of this car parking here?
Let me show you the existing. I have a demo plan that would. So I hope I find it here. Okay, the dashed lines here are showing the existing of what's existing out there today. So this area
Right, okay,
is what's coming out to prepare this landscaping that's being increased to provide the pad area for the display. So this curb line was existing there today.
So the only thing expanding is this here, this not
Correct.
getting. So how is it? So it's just an optical illusion that this looks smaller. This distance looks smaller than what's on there in the site today, or this is all new too. This landscaping adjacent to the building. Where's my photos?
Yes, that is, because there was angled parking out there before. And so what we've done is we've changed the direction of the parking. We've added the landscaping in front here as a buffer to help screen that. And so that distance has reduced slightly just because of that angled parking.
Okay. Now, where is like visitor parking on the site?
We have on our site plan. Let me move the landscape plan out of there. We have actually visitor parking right out in here, along the front there. Those 7 stalls, including the ADA stall.
Okay, so it'll be signed visitors.
Customer.
Okay,
parking.
customer.
Yeah.
All right, and then employee parking there. It's in the back here, or where?
Yes, all in this area right in here, employee parking.
Okay, and that's also signed for.
Yes, there's 33 stalls total for employee parking.
Okay. And you said 7 for visitor?
Correct.
Oh, it's like customers. Okay, great. I think those are all my questions for right now.
Okay.
I'd like to open the public hearing. I have one request to speak form from Lloyd Albright. If you'd like to come up and have a seat in the chair here, and there's a microphone for you.
Guess I'll use your microphone.
Or you can use this one too, or you
There
can
you
share
go.
if you want. Yeah.
My name is White Albright. I live 60 feet away from the property line of the property in question today. I have basically 3 questions. First one is, do the deed restrictions and the restrictions on the former dealer apply to this permit or not? I'll tell you, presumably what I'm concerned about, they were restricted not to do any body work or painting. And Mel Clayton didn't pay any attention to that and did it. So I just wondered if that's a restriction that these people are going to be required to abide by or not. I see that the hazardous waste has all been taken care of, or the environmental review.
Correct. If it was a condition of approval of the original project, it would carry forward with this.
So
this applicant.
it's still good. The other, probably the only other main concern was that the PA system was so loud you could hear it down to Earl Warren Park. And we complained numerous times, and they said, we'll cut it back, and they'd do it for a couple of days. But that thing was so loud you could hear it all over town. And we're just asking that that be considered in their permit.
Okay.
Nothing wrong with the PA, but they had it up so loud you could hear it, like I say, clear down to Earl Warren. That's my only concern. I think it's a good plan. I think it's needed there. It's been vacant too long now. So we're not opposing it. We're just asking about these different conditions. Thank you very much.
The other thing, you said there was 3 concerns.
Well,
I have 2.
I minimized it.
Okay. All right. All right.
Thank you.
So you support with concerns. Is there anybody else who would like to provide public comments? I received an email from Hank and Sherry Homburg, and they live also on Cordero Drive. They don't say whether they're for or against it, but they have concerns related to all the auto dealerships in that area in regards to employee parking, and then also the upkeep of the landscaping in the rear of the site.
I actually did call them and left them a voicemail letting them know that we are providing the 33 stalls for employee parking,
Okay.
as well as that DCH has now scheduled a landscape maintenance to come out there within the next 30 days to do the tree trimming along that rear property
Okay.
line.
Okay.
And so they did call me back to thank me that I had responded to them, and they were happy to hear that we were going to be doing something about that.
Okay, great, that's good to hear. And then I received a letter from Miss Paula Westbury. Says this already being done, they already display cars in the 40-foot setback, so let it continue. Never allow resurfacing. It is full of great good. So I'm not quite sure. She's okay with sounds like she's okay with the display, but just not the paving of it. Okay, so with that, I will close the public hearing. Yeah, I didn't get this with mine, so I had the concerns regarding the fact that it's a front yard. It's the front setback, and the front setback is, to me, really important in that it's part of the public domain. Although it's not public property, it is part of the public's visual, experience. And landscaping and screening and setbacks and that are very important. And so that's why I wanted to know what kind of landscaping you're proposing, if the existing planter was getting wider, how you're going to respond to that. Because I know as a business you want it to look nice too. You want it to be attractive because you want to attract people to come to to your site and buy lots of cars. But and I'm also pleased to hear you contact the neighbors and try to be good neighbors and working with the noise aspect. That's great. And so I can make the findings outlined in the staff report that this project, the modification is consistent with the purposes and intent of the zoning ordinance and necessary to secure an appropriate improvement on the lot. I want to change the finding over. It says the proposed parking slab will provide a display space for showcasing the dealership's products similar to other dealers in the surrounding area. I want to cross off that last part where it says similar to other auto dealers in the surrounding area. And add the fact that additional landscaping is being provided between street and building. And that offsets the use of this area for the display. Use of this area for the display. What is a display? It's a okay. And then it is subject to the condition that I want to make sure because I didn't see a note on the plan that the visitor and the employee parking would be signed appropriately.
Okay.
So that people that come to the site, especially the customers, they know where to park, and that there is a defined area in the rear for the employees.
I take it doesn't show, but we usually put in directional signage to give them guidance, and then we mark the stalls.
I just know my experience from going to Mel Clayton Ford, trying to find a place to park to look at a car. It wasn't clearly marked where I was supposed to park.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
all right. So this project's appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days. And again, like I said on the other projects that you guys were sitting through, the Planning Commission has oversight authority, and they regularly review the agendas. And if they decide this warrants discussion by them, they'll pull it up. And if that were to occur, Roxanne would contact you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Very much.
The next project is 1050
you.
Las Alturas. Everything I have.
Morning.
Okay, yeah, anytime.
Okay, thank you. Project site, which is a little over 27,000 square feet, has frontage out here on Camino Alto. It's accessed here off of Terrace Road and actually has frontage in this corner, but actually has a Las Alturas address, which is a parcel off. Unusual, but okay. Previously developed with a single-family residence and garage that were destroyed in the recent T-fire. This is a proposal to replace a new residence in a similar location. Due to steep topography issues, the house is situated like the previous one up here at the top of the lot. During the early stages of planning the rebuild, the applicant was informed that this would be considered an interior yard due to the private designation of Terrace Road. So the house was designed with an encroachment into what actually is a front yard. This very small portion, though, is the entry bridge. And approximately, what did we say? 264. This is a two-story element with encroachment into this front yard setback. When one goes to the site, you can understand why the house is pulled up into this area. The encroachment is very small. It allows for replacement of an improved residence in the previously existing location. Staff supports this modification as it's submitted.
Thank you. All right, if you'd like to state your name and association with the project.
Okay, I'm Peter Becker. I'm the architect. Christine Cunningham is on my left, and she's with me in my office. And this is the owners, Bill Tomlin and Mary Haggerty.
Okay, do you have anything you want to add?
It just seems that the spirit of the law kind of is being upheld in this situation. That having that funny little notch that just happens to have been cut in there doesn't seem to have any effect whatsoever on what the relationship of the building to the street and the relationship of neighbors to neighbors would have. It has no effect on that whatsoever. And in fact, the old house was already encroaching a little bit, about half that. And other neighbors similarly are much closer. But this has truly been a precedent for the old use prior to the change of the law in 2008 of it being a private drive and having not these kind of horrendous setback requirements.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have anything to add? No? Okay. I'm going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to address the staff hearing officer on 1050 Las Alturas Road? No? I'd like to note we received a letter from Ms. Paula Westbury opposed to the project. I went out to the site and yeah, just by chance I saw you had to turn because the address says I think it was 1052. It points that way. I thought, well, I just came past 40, so it must be down that way. And as you're driving down the road, Terrace Road, it feels like a road to about like this area, and then it truly does feel like it's a driveway. It starts splintering off, and then just looking at the steep slope, I believe that this is the most appropriate location on the site for the residents, pushed up against the road, and I can support the project. I think I know the code requires a 35-foot setback, but like I said, about this somewhere around here, it starts feeling like a driveway which has a 0 setback. So if I can support your project and make the findings, I want to add to the findings though, on the second, add a new second sentence saying the site is significantly constrained by the existing steep slope and the proposed encroachments. So then just start the sentence there. And the proposed encroachments into the front setback allow for a rebuild of a 2-story single-family residence with minor changes in the location from what previously existed. And then at the end of that sentence, put without impacts to the adjacent neighborhood. Got it, Gloria? Okay. So with that, you have a project, and it's appealable within 10 calendar days. And like I said previously, the Planning Commission does oversee all my actions, and if they decide it warrants discussion by them, they have the authority to call it up too. And if that would happen, Roxanne would contact you. Okay?
Thank you very much.
I think that's the end of yours, right?
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is 1931 El Camino de la Luz. If the applicant would like to come up here and... Hi. Gloria, do you have my letter?
Oh, you should grab a chair for that.
We can squeeze together and make room.
I can scoot over.
Thank you.
Take this part out.
Oh. Whenever you're ready. Did you bring the story pole pictures?
I do.
Do you have it from the street?
Street.
Great. Okay. Whenever you're ready.
Okay. This is 1931 El Camino de la Luz. The project is the subject of enforcement for the as-built conversion of their 495 square foot garage and permitting that to legalize that, and construction of a 348 net square feet carport in order to provide their 2 covered parking spaces that were displaced by the as-built conversion. The applicant, I'm sorry, I lost my place in my notes. Transportation staff will be here to address design standards and waivers that have been discussed and issued for this potential project. And I just want to say, when enforcement cases come forward, we do look at it with a fresh set of eyes for areas that were converted illegally. So we want to make sure that the construction was done and it observes all the setbacks and you have all the parking requirements met as if it was never done illegally. So we did look at it that particular way. And as you can see, they have their 1,250 square feet of open yard here. They observe the 6-foot side and rear setbacks, and they observe the 20-foot setback with their new proposed construction. The driveway legally existed. In order to minimize grading and potential ground disturbance, they chose to reuse the driveway that is underneath the proposed new carport, and the maneuver is shortened, and that is what the subject of the design waiver was for transportation. And again, Stacy Wilson is here from transportation to discuss that if we have questions. The project site is located in the coastal zone. The area is recognized as Component 2, and staff has reviewed the location and found it to be consistent with the LCP. Staff did consult the LCP's visual resource map, which I have here, and I know it's very, very tiny. This location is where Meigs comes down and turns, and there's this sphere here, and that would be where Lighthouse or Mesa Park is located. Sorry. Public views and vistas are protected under the local coastal plan, and we consider those areas to be from parks or potential historic resources, such as Mission, Courthouse, or the harbor or waterfront areas.
Even beaches, right? From beaches looking back towards
Public
the city.
beaches, yes. Looking back towards the city and those bluff tops that are impacted by any new construction. With that, staff recommends that you approve the coastal development permit to legalize the garage conversion and to construct the two-car carport, making the findings outlined in the staff report.
Okay, thank you. I don't think I have any questions right now. If you'd like to state your name for the record and association with the project, and anything you want to add.
Good morning, Ms. Reardon, Ms. Johnston. I'm Mark Miranda. I'm the agent for the owners, Tom Thomas on my left and Mindy Thomas on my right. And this is Doug Fell for any legal questions. The project before you is a pretty simple carport. It's designed to be pretty minimum. It's 26.5 feet from the front property line, and it's 19 feet wide by 19 feet long. And there's a 20-foot easement that runs down the east side of the property that goes down to Mrs. Doolittle's property, which is just below here. And the easement is about 19 feet 7 inches from the front end, and it's 22 feet from the back end of the house, as far as where the carport is in relation. The design of the carport is, you can probably see it better on the elevations. So from the house, it's 19 feet, and there's two 4x4 steel posts that are set 5 feet back from the end, so they're 14 feet from the house. There's a 4x12 parallam that comes out to 19 feet that is on both sides here. And then the ridge beam is a 6x12, so there's one lateral support that gives it shear value, and it also has the king post that holds the ridge beam up. So from the front, you'll see just a big square. So everything below is open except two 4x4 posts, and you can see that on the story poles. The roof is actually about 2 feet 4 inches high from the bottom, 2 foot 4 inches high from the bottom to the top, and it has 2x6 roof rafters, 3/4 inch plywood, and then just composition roofing. So it matches the style of the house. The roof line matches the existing roof line, roof pitch, and it's just really simplistic in nature. It's providing the 2 covered spaces required by the zoning ordinance. The project itself, there's letters in support of it that will probably be read into the record in a while. It doesn't alter any landforms. It doesn't create any erosion or geologic hazards. It doesn't affect any public access because there isn't any public access. It's down on the Mesa Park and then all the way to Thousand Steps, which are like 1,800 feet away and over 2,000 feet away. It's compatible with the surrounding area in that all the homes that are developed along El Camino de la Luz basically have 2 covered garages, 2 covered parking spaces in a garage, and those garages are all facing the street except for a couple of them, and they're within 20 to 25 feet of the front property line as this one is. There are 2 carports there's one 5 houses down on 1910 El Camino de la Luz, which has a 2-car carport that faces the street. And then also the house directly below this one, Mrs. Doolittle's, has a little 2-car carport as well. It's kind of beach bungalow style. This home, in 1978, the Doolittles had 2 properties. The one below it was the one that fell into the ocean. And then the house, the wood from that house was picked up and salvaged and built this house. So that's the story.
Okay.
And more importantly, as Suzanne pointed out, it doesn't affect any public views. So it meets the zoning ordinance, it meets the local coastal plan, it meets the Santa Barbara Municipal Code, and it doesn't impact any public views. So the findings of the staff hearing officer 2844-150 could be made. And Doug, you have anything to add?
Okay, thank you. I have a question regarding your story because I think there's some confusion over your support beams.
Right.
Can you show,
It might be easier
On
to
the-
see on the other one here.
well, okay, yeah, first on this one, can you point on the site plan where all these, right on the site plan where the, whoops.
This post here is the one closest to the front property line. That's the 4x4 steel post that sits right here.
Okay, so this post here is right there. Okay,
Yep,
and
it's 5 feet back, allows for an easier ingress and egress maneuver by setting it back.
okay, and
Then the other post is right here.
that's on the back side of the fence. So this fence is going to be
and then realize
relocated?
that the fence will be relocated. It comes out and then it kind of curves a little bit and then it kind of comes back to a point.
Okay.
These two posts here that you
then
see in
this
the
one here,
middle
yes.
actually aren't going to exist, but we had to install them in order to hold the ridge beam up. Otherwise, there was no way to keep the ridge beam up.
Correct, okay, so they're in there. Because there was some photos submitted
Right.
stating they were in the wrong place, and I just wanted to clarify that those aren't associated with the carport. They are just support beams.
Yeah, and it's written right
And
on
this-
here. If you walk over there, you can see that it explains.
Yeah,
it.
so in this here, there's not a further overhang here. The support posts are back here, so this is the overhang that comes out. That's
Right.
denoted here in the site plan.
Yeah, actually, the yellow tape is the end of this line, and this PVC pipe right here, you see, is at 19 feet, and that line there, that's the top of the roof line. So what we did is we outlined the roof line, and then this PVC pipe across the bottom is this front lateral support, and it's the bottom of the beam. So basically, when you look at it from the front, you're seeing any mass that's going to be above it is above this line that creates the roof and creates the 4x12s that are on each side, and then the ridge beam here, and then there'll be a king post that kicks up from this big beam. So there's a beam right here.
Okay.
So everything below it, at an 8-foot mark off the house, is completely open except 2 4x4 beams, and then there's a 2-foot 4-inch high roof structure that matches the existing house.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'd like to open the public hearing for 1931 El Camino de la Luz, and I do have 2 speaker slips. The first one's from Janice Taylor, and actually that was the letter that I had referenced. And then the second one is David Grope. Yeah, I'm sorry. So if Janice, would you like to come up? And
If we may, could I go first?
Sure.
Their counsel, and mine will be short.
okay, sure, yes.
Where would you like me to?
You can have a seat up here at the table with us? Yes, please. So you're their attorney?
Yes, I'm an attorney for Mr. and Mrs. Taylor, who are the neighbors directly across the street at 1936 El Camino. I'm an attorney in the law firm of Grokenberger and Smith.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to cover 3 points that I think are important, and they probably deal more with policy considerations in terms of reviewing this particular project. But by way of introduction, let me just make a couple of points I think are important. My firm does represent the Taylors, and we have worked with them in some, I'll say, unrelated civil matters that exist between the parties. We're not going to address those. Those are really not appropriate, but I let you know that I am in that position. Okay. With regards to the extensive letter brief that was filed by the Taylors, I think it's important to also know that Diane Mansinger, who's a appellate counsel and also a land use attorney, spent a good deal of time putting together certain concerns and issues related more to the legal aspects as well as the factual aspects. She's not here, but we want you to know that these issues involving the view, and essentially I'll say the blue water view issues, whether they be more limited or sweeping in terms of public, are critical. So with that background, that this is a considered objection, not just based on an individual loss, but on a public concern over these, we'll say, dwindling resources from the public streets, from the mountains. It's important that we make a couple of points. And so with that in mind, I'll state what we're asking for first, then I'll go to my 3 points. We're asking you to reject this, send it back. It needs work. If it's not rejected, and we know that there's discretion, then refer it to either the Planning Commission or the Single Family Design Review Board, because what is being asked here was characterized as a simple application. And the truth is you don't have controversy, and you don't impact significant public issues if it's simple. So the controversy is there for you, and we ask you to take those into account. Now, with regards to the 3 issues. First one is with regards to the concept of the public domain and the fact that special blue water views are within that category. The second point I want to address is the visual impact and consistency of this particular project. And then the third point has to do with rules and just why it's important to follow rules and why rules weren't necessarily followed in this instance. What I'm not going to do before I go into the 3 points is go over the extensive brief and photographs. Mrs. Taylor will address some of those, and she's not going to duplicate a lot in there, but she has points to make, and they're heartfelt, genuinely felt. So let's go to the first point, this concept of the special blue water views being within the public domain. I mean, as a practical matter, what's happening here is this carport intrudes into what would be otherwise an unimpeded public view, albeit not sweeping from the ocean to the mountains or the mountains to the ocean, but still a public view from the street. And we just don't have that many corridors of views remaining. And if we begin to allow this wall mentality of, well, it's just one carport on a street, we start to lose valuable public resources. I say that to you as a member of the public. I say it to you as a person who has dealt with the city view ordinance and on vegetation, and I will say with some limited experience within the Coastal Commission, but I've heard a lot about that from Ms. Matzinger, and so they are real issues, and you are being asked to deal with a project that has that impact. What I think is unfortunate is that there appears to be a disparity between the Coastal Commission and our local Coastal Commission plan in terms of emphasis on these both private and public view, this distinction that exists. Because one could look at this impairment to the view, this view corridor that is affected across the street by the Taylors, and there's truly a personal aspect to it. But also as one walks down the street, one can say, well, gee, just how many people are going to be impacted? I mean, is this really what we're about? Well, the answer is we are about that. We are about protecting those views. In fact, this city is about it. It passed a view ordinance which relates to vegetation, basically designating a priority to maintain views from property owners to the ocean, to the city, to the vistas. I mean, we know that within the overall scheme of things, views are important. I'm going to go one step further because I
forgot to mention at the beginning, generally we limit public comment to 2 minutes, so if you want to have 5 minutes, that would be good.
Well, I'll tell you what then. I will, I'm going to be able to do it within the next 2 to 3 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I know, I forgot to mention, sorry.
That's fine. But and so I'm going to take at least 30 seconds to point this out, because I think it's significant. In the old days, you moved west. A young man moved west, and you opened up and you bought property, or you acquired it, and it was to encourage development. But today's world is different. We buy and sell property based on views. We as a city, as a legislative entities, try to preserve dwindling resources. It's changed. So, notwithstanding a specific point as to this view and whether you characterize it as a public view or a limited public view, it is a visual resource. And we ask you to take that into account, which is why I think it's really important to maybe exercise this discretion to refer it to the Planning Commission or the Design Review Board. The public domain blue water issue is there. Second point, the visual impact and consistency. I've touched on it briefly, which really comes down to this idea that the blue water view, the question is not just that it obstructs, that this carport obstructs, but that it impacts a visual resource. I mean, it just does. This street, Mrs. Taylor will talk about, is really a special street in terms of walking and at what points you can see and enjoy these views. And those are in danger of being lost. And in terms of consistency, the consistency is not just that there are actually no carports on the ocean side of this particular street. This would be the first one. But I'm going to say to you, and it may not be the best legal point, but it is a policy consideration. We do cherish views in the city. We cherish them in the county, and there is an impairment to this view. And we ask you to consider that because this is not consistent with the neighborhood. The third point, the concept of rules. This isn't just a new project, as we all know. This situation comes to you because decisions were made to basically ignore the building code, the zoning ordinances that apply to the illegal conversion of this garage. And now, after property has been bought, sold, and developed in the area, that people have enjoyed this, there's an application to say, forgive us this transgression, and we'll make it better. But we'll make it better by impacting public views, the issues that I've addressed. I think rules are important. I think that in this instance, there is an opportunity to design this carport, should it even be considered, and I'm arguing against it, to something less intrusive, shorter. There is discretion to do that. And so we ask for your consideration. And as a member of the public, because I do represent a lot of different property owners that have dealt with view issues, both county and city, I ask you not to let this go so far that we start chipping away because it does have an impact. And I thank you for your time.
Wait, I have one question. When you say shorter, sorry,
Sure.
something in my eye.
Yes.
Shorter this way or shorter this way?
Shorter in terms of length.
Okay.
I believe
All right.
that the length, and I believe that there is some discretion. I don't believe that there are rules. I had some communication with the city attorney. Just in general, there certainly was no commitment by the city attorney one way or the other. That's not what it was suggested, anything filed, but that something reducing it to a size of 16 feet in length. Now, what does that do? Well, one, it preserves the corridor, less intrusive, but the truth is that it still has an impact. But if we're going to talk about impacts, then mitigation of impact is certainly an alternative.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Janice Taylor, if you'd like to come up.
We imposed the 2-minute rule.
2 minutes?
For this?
Okay.
Okay.
I haven't figured out what I'm going to say. Hi, I'm Janice Taylor, and I live directly across the street. And I've lived in this neighborhood for 20 years, and it's a really special area, and I hope the Thomases will agree with that. We haven't had a chance to speak in years. And it's, let me tell you why. There is a cul-de-sac. It's a cul-de-sac, so there's less traffic. There's a footbridge at the end of the street that carries people, connecting the whole coastal area. It's on the bike path. As you said, it's on the visual scenic map. So when people see views from the footbridge, they have it from Oliver, and then there's 2 spots on the street itself, right in the middle, right at the Thomas's property and a couple of houses away. There's 2 where people, and I've seen this for 20 years, people stop and they reflect, they look down that street, down the visual ocean area. Sorry, I'm a little nervous.
That's fine.
And it's a very special. Sorry, this shouldn't take up my 2 minutes. It's been a very upsetting process to go through here. Anyway, so it's a cherished area, and we want to preserve that. I think maybe it's my background. I worked for many years with the Central Park Conservancy for public views. Bruce, my husband, his father was the chair of this planning commission and on the board of the historic preservation. So it's very hard to separate private and public views. These are areas where people stop, we watch. In fact, we all signed a petition to not have sidewalks on this particular street, because what people do is they amble down the street together, they look at the views. It's just that kind of neighborhood. So, we're not mean-spirited people. We're not trying to shoot down this project, but there really is a win-win solution on the table that could be much more compatible with these public view issues. If that were true, that the story poles accurately depicted what was there, then it wouldn't be so problematic. But I beg to differ. I've seen the plans. We measured on the street because we couldn't go on the property, but 19 feet from the house to the end of those poles, or the visible poles, is not what was seen. So there's been a misrepresentation on what has been shown, because all weekend people are ambling and looking, oh, there's the permit sign, there's what's showing. It's not accurate. So there's some questions on process here. The public really hasn't had an opportunity to view this accurately. We submitted a whole lot of other reasons. I don't know if I don't have 2 minutes to go through all. I only have 2 minutes. So, but also, I just wanted to clarify, there is another carport on that side of the street, but it's not visible from the street. Barbara Doolittle has one. It's not visible from the street. There is one carport on the street on the opposite side. I have a picture of that. I can submit that if you'd like. But I'd also like to submit pictures of Elise Way, which is also in the coastal zone, and it has lots of carports. And we can show you those. And I just want to state it, we should be very careful about how we approve carports, because the way parking is handled in a neighborhood really triggers something. And we've gone through a lot of process. There have been 4 houses in a row that went through. We had to go through 5 years of approvals to get our project approved. And why? The biggest issue was parking. And so we ended up having to move our whole driveway to relocate the parking. Next door and the other house, they all had to put parking in the backyard. Parking is a huge consideration. So I just maybe the Thomases weren't aware of this. It's a big factor, and I hope they can extend the enforcement period so it doesn't kick back to having to cause any problems for the Thomases. I just think there's a win-win solution here that can be more considerate of not only the neighbors but the public. It's just I'd like to inspire everyone to think about what El Camino de la Luz could be, how we can all work together to make it a nicer place so each property owner could feel good about the property they have and be proud of the project they created. If something is rushed because of an enforcement situation, we're not giving an opportunity to create a really beautiful community together, caring. And I don't have time to list all the reasons, but if you want to give me 2 more minutes, I can explain if I have to submit them for the record. But there's lots of reasons, process-wise.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I've said enough?
Yeah. I did read your letter last night, so I have.
I'm hoping we can work together for a nicer Santa Barbara.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the staff hearing officer on 1931 El Camino de la Luz?
We'd like to respond to the public comment.
Okay. I would like to note for the record that I received a letter from Scott and Leslie Wiscombe, who are neighbors across the street, 1930 El Camino de la Luz, expressing support for the project, and they were unable to come to our meeting today. And then I did acknowledge Janice's letter she submitted. So with that, I close the public hearing. We lost Gloria. Stacy, I have a couple of questions for you, if you could come up, please. Right, you can sit by me.
Good morning.
Oh, there is one. No, this is mine. I'm not sharing. I'm kidding. All right. What I'd like you to discuss is the waiver request for the parking. I should keep my skills. And then the size, respond to Janice's comments regarding the size. Mine was slow to turn on too. So
I think it's on.
Yeah, it's green. Then the size of the carport. Okay. I'm also interested in not only the length of the carport, but the, I think it's called clear space between the floor and the bottom, the 8 foot here. What's a standard or what we like to see? So if you
Okay, so the interior height. What was the first thing that you wanted me to address?
The size, the dimensions of the actual carport.
Okay.
And then the waiver part with the backing out and
Okay.
the configuration if there needs to be changes to the driveway. So just the whole.
Okay.
I'm Stacy Wilson. I'm with Transportation Planning, and I took a look at this project as well as my coworkers Chelsea Swanson and my supervisor Steve Foley. I think we'll go with. Let me phrase this first. What I do in my job is to make sure that parking functions. Okay. With that said, does this parking function? Yes. There are a couple of elements that can relate and change and influence function. For this particular case, there is a waiver that's because of the configuration of the parking. This parking is, and it has to do with the our parking standards, our standards for parking design. I'm sorry, that's the official name. And the standards for parking design do show a parking configuration that has a maneuvering dimension, which is the dimension that is between the rear of the parking area to the back of the backup area. That configuration that is depicted in the standards for parking design is often a common one, but also relates commonly to configurations where the parking is located at the rear of a lot, so that and that the vehicle would enter or leave the site in a forward movement. This configuration that's proposed is different from that, because this configuration proposes that the vehicles would exit the site backing out. That's allowed under the code. That is something we check on an individual basis using the turning templates, which we use as our discretionary tool to determine if there's function. Does that function? Yes. One of the reasons that was, I worked with Mr. Mirando to determine the best location for the vertical supports, the columns, in order to accommodate this maneuvering into the spaces as well as out of the spaces and backing out to the street. So that's that is the maneuvering in and out of the spaces. And additionally, you wanted me to you want to handle these separately, or want me to go on?
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. The configuration, the length of the. I think you wanted me to speak to the length of the carport. Is that right? Mm-hmm. What I'm calling the length is the length from the front of a vehicle as it would be parked in the space to the back of the vehicle. The length of the covering. Covering or no covering has no bearing on function. Mm-hmm. The zoning ordinance asks for the covered spaces. So the actual vehicle maneuvers and location for parking really do not change. Their function does not change with covering or lack of covering. So in terms of in terms of trying to answer the question for zoning, do we think that the covered parking is to be provided, will be provided? We use a design vehicle that is 16.5 feet long. The standard covering length for covered spaces is 20 feet long. So functionally, would we have a covered parking space? Yeah. If it would be, this is proposed at 19, is that correct? Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. So we think that functionally a 16.5 foot long vehicle would be covered, completely covered by a 19 foot long space. Covering. Okay. Okay. And then the last thing that I have to address is the interior height, as I call it. If we could go to this. Wow. Can you help me?
To
Mark?
elevation. Can we go to the elevation?
Elevation. Okay, great. Thank you. This dimension right here, 8 feet as proposed, we have a minimum height interior of 6 feet 6 inches. Principally, that is to accommodate vehicles as well as, and then pedestrians getting in and out of the space. We do not have a maximum.
Okay. Did you check with building? On the height of the...
I could speak to that a little bit. I've dealt with building. I was going to say 6'8" for pedestrian doors. I've had that discussion with the building inspectors, but
Okay.
But the common garage door heights are 7 feet. That's a manufacturing standard at a minimum, so it may comply with the building minimums.
I have somebody going to check. Okay, great. Thank you. And then in terms of is it, if this area was rounded like it is up here, you probably don't have your template, would that enable them to come out and go forward? I mean, is there a concern? When I went to the site visit yesterday, there are a lot of cars parked on this street. So in terms of, and I know it's not a busy street, it's a dead-end cul-de-sac, in terms of backing out. So that's probably another reason why to support backing out onto the street, since it is no through traffic. But do you know if this were to be angled, if they'd be able to make the movement to go out?
I don't have that at my fingertips. We could work, if you were to choose to direct the applicant to work with transportation on trying to facilitate head-out maneuvers, then that's something we could work on. I just don't know right offhand. It's, I can tell you that we may not be able to achieve that. Maybe not for a standard vehicle. We could work to do any, to make that as possible for as many vehicles as possible.
Right.
Something like that.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Okay.
Look at my list of notes. Okay, I think that was my questions for right now. If Mr. Felt, you asked for a brief moment to respond to public comment.
I just wanted to go back to this idea about blue water views being protected under the Coastal Act. And I think if we look at all of the cases, if we look at all of the many decisions that are made in Santa Barbara, we don't, and at the Coastal Commission, do not create private protection for blue water views. It is only if it is a public resource that is viewed from typically a park or other public gathering space. Had I known that this letter was going to come in, I could have brought you the latest Coastal Commission case in which it was down in Manhattan Beach, and someone was allowed to add on to their house and block the blue water view of the person who was uphill. And the court said properly that the Coastal Commission did not protect that view for that private individual, that there were public viewing areas that were identified in the local coastal plan in Manhattan Beach that they did and would preserve. You couldn't come in and build in those viewing areas. But when it came to a private home, there isn't a private blue water view. And as far as somebody driving up and down the street having a blue water view, that's not a public view. So I don't think there was any merit to that whole blue water view discussion we had this morning.
Okay, thank you. I saw Danny came and talked to you about the height.
building code requirement is 7 feet clear, including all obstructions, so the bottom of the garage door, or if you had a garage situation, or a vent or shaft or beam would have to be 7 feet clear from the ground to the bottom of that structure.
So that's the minimum code requirement.
So to the bottom of this beam.
Okay. Let me see the pictures.
That right there is the bottom of that beam.
So that's 8
PVC
feet.
pipe is the bottom of that beam. That's 8 feet. It's actually a little bit higher right here. It's 8 feet at the house to that point. But since the driveway slopes down, it's about 8 feet 6, 8 feet 7, due to that fact that it's sloping away.
You need to be on the mic.
Yeah, leaning too far forward.
What other photos did you bring? Let me see your photos. What I want to, this one here actually, where was this taken? This was taken on the opposite side of the street?
This was taken in their existing driveway right across the street at 1930.
Okay.
But their driveway's moving to the other side, so that one will be closed off.
I just wanted to know where the so you're talking like right here?
Exactly.
Okay.
It's looking straight through the trees.
Well, I agree with everyone that pulled up what the main issue is in this project, and it is visual resources. Hazards is a policy that pertains, but this isn't a bluff-top property. There's 2 properties beforehand. There's development. There's no increase in hardscape, so drainage isn't an issue. Archaeology is, again, not an issue. So it truly is visual resources. And our LCP was adopted by the Coastal Commission, and it implements the policies of the Coastal Act. So that's what we go off of, is what's in our LCP, our local coastal plan. And in visual resources, it talks about views along the ocean from public vista places. There's a number of, I think it's called cones of view. Yeah, typical cones of view. So when we went through and developed our coastal plan, we surveyed and we identified significant public viewpoints, and that's what this map illustrates. We have another map that Ms. Taylor submitted, which is nice, which is our MEA map that also identifies significant visual resources. Oops, that's the big map. Visual resources in the city, and it has areas outlined here in blue, and so this is our LCP map, and as Suzanne had pointed out, it's this area, and so this project, it's not an identified visual sensitive area. That doesn't mean that we don't take visuals into consideration in the coastal plan. And then in regards to the MEA, this blue area, that's the beach and the bluff-top properties. And again, this property is not visible from the beach, so this project wouldn't impact views from the beach. And I believe the view on this property is actually down the driveway. And the carport, from any location, you can see that there's clear, I guess there's views here, but there's obstructions already with landscaping. This one, it must be higher elevation. I just don't believe that it's going to cause a significant visual impact that's inconsistent with our policies. Now, whether you can lower it some, I'd be interested in hearing from you as the agent if it could be lowered in height. I don't believe it could be reduced. I don't think that would be consistent with our zoning ordinance to reduce the length of the building, but to lower it to reduce the impact.
Sure, we could lower the beam to 7 foot, and I would put it at the 8-foot plate at the top of it, so it would drop the whole roof 1 foot. And it's at 19 feet, and there is, on the elevation, the ridge beam sticks out an extra foot. So that's something that was just architectural, so it's at 20 feet. And it's not in the easement. It's this ridge beam right here, which could also be cut back to 19 if that's going to be something that's seen as an impact. So the 4x12 lateral supports that come out from the house could drop to 7 feet and meet the 2007 CBC.
Okay.
And that would put the top of the roof at about 9 feet 4, 9 feet 6 total. It should be pretty minimal.
So 9 feet top, peak height.
I think it'd be 9 feet 4, 9 foot 6, somewhere right in there. From the base at the house to the top of the roof structure, to the top of the asphalt shingles.
Okay, so maximum of 9.5.
It would be a little bit, as the pavement drops off, this beam just gets longer, but the roof still stays parallel still stays level.
That's a maximum 9, 6.5 at house.
Right. Because the roof is actually about a 1.16 to 12.
Okay, so the maximum length would be 19, the maximum interior space would be 7, and then the top of the roof would be maximum 9.5, could be?
Correct.
Okay.
The maximum would be 7 with the agreement, so.
How much did you say that the grade difference was? 4 inches?
Actually, it varies. I'd have to go out there and measure it. I think it's like 6, 7 inches on this post. And this one might be a little more as it drops away.
Well, you said this was 6 inches
Yeah.
greater
6
at that
inches
post.
lower as the pavement drops. Yeah, so the post becomes 6 inches more, 6 inches longer, but it still reaches the 7-foot plate height.
Okay, well, with it being reduced like that, I can support the project and make the findings in the staff report. I want to change the one part of the finding where it talks about the project would not impact views from public view corridors, it says. This isn't an identified public view corridor. And so change it to say something like the project would not impact views from designated public vantage points. I think that is better. And then add the condition that the we'll have to craft it, but you understand the intent that the maximum interior height is 7 foot at the house, and then to the roof line 9 feet 6 inches. But then parallel out's not the right word because it's not parallel to the ground, but level. Okay, great. Okay, so level. And then the maximum length 19 feet. I don't think there's any other changes to the conditions. Okay, so with that you have an approval. Your next step would be to submit for the building permit. However, my action is appealable within 10 calendar days to the Planning Commission, and they also have the oversight authority that if they believe this warrants discussion before them, that they could call it up during that same 10-day appeal period. Okay, and if that was to occur, Suzanne would get in contact with you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. I have all the pictures you submitted, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can get some more. I'll get her some more story pole pictures in the next day.
Yeah, and then you should submit a map.
Showing where the pictures were taken from.
As
Good. Oh, the story pole map?
Yeah,
Okay.
as well as if you can put where the support were, the support, coming down
Okay, it's behind that tree. Yeah, you can't see it on that.
on the plan. Draw little
Oh, okay.
dots
All right.
on that one, okay?
All right,
All right, thanks. Sure, Thank you, Stacy.
I'll be right here for the next
Oh, great, okay. So the next item is, no, that's fine. Okay, the next one is 1402 Grand Avenue and 860 Jimeno Road. If the applicant would like to come up. You need my plans? Whenever you're ready.
This project is located at 1402 Grand and 860 Jimeno. It is a lot line adjustment between the two in favor of 1402 Grand. Approximately 3,100 square feet of land, lot area is going to be transferred from Jimeno to the Grand Avenue property. As part of this proposal, the applicant proposes to install some gates at the bottom of the driveway at 1402 Grand, as well as a condition of approval, construct a one-car carport right here over the northernmost parking space. And we can get to a bigger site plan.
So that one or this one where it's blown up?
Blown up. So one of the findings for a lot line adjustment is that it is consistent with the zoning ordinance. So we checked it for setbacks and for parking, as well as open yard. It's a 5-acre parcel, so open yard wasn't a problem. However, the parking was not covered. So we are proposing to do a one-car carport. The floor area of the house and the health room on this property is less than 85% of the maximum FAR guideline for this property, and therefore they can propose a one covered parking space and one uncovered parking space. The cars that are indicated on this site plan are actually greater in size than the city's standard vehicle we use for maneuvers. 16.5 feet is the length of a standard car. I believe this one's closer to 20. And if you were to measure from the front of the parking area here to about in here, you'll get 16.5 feet at the top of the rear windshield. So this space is over the minimum width for a carport. I believe it's closer to 14 feet in width on that particular space and over 10.5 on this particular space. So with that, the project would meet all the zoning ordinance requirements for both properties. There is some enforcement issues on 860 Jimeno, was for conversion of a understory, addition of a exterior door and a window that are also tied into this. It was mentioned in a zoning information report. So we are getting that permitted also, and the whole project has been reviewed by the Single Family Design Board, and they are comfortable with the changes and recommended forwarding it to the staff hearing officer.
So is that a condition, proposed condition of approval, that the building violations be...
That they get their exterior changes approved by the SFDB on both properties and get their building permits.
I don't see that listed in the condition.
We're proposing to take out a window and install French doors. That has not been done, so there is an enforcement. It's part of what the Single Design Board was reviewing. It's a proposal to do so.
Okay. Any other questions? Any other comments?
There are some changes to the condition of approval because...
okay, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, there's some nexus issues.
Okay, so if you'd like to state your name and association with the project and whatever you'd like to add.
My name is Rochelle Malin. I'm the designer and also the agent for Drivo and Todd Drivo and Melanie Kava. Also, I did, the Single Design Board had directed that we get an arborist to do a recommendation on a tree, and this is back to the turnout area, and he had reviewed this. My client would still like to pursue a little more space dedicated for some maneuvering. And I actually, this has a proposal on it. And we had Duke McPherson, who's an arborist, review this. And there's two issues there, is that the design board had mentioned something about boulders. And we would prefer not to put boulders in the area because it is a pretty steep grade in here adjacent. If a car were to hit them and dislodge them, the residents' health room were here, those would go. There's also on section B of the staff report a geotechnical issue with potential landslide and erosion, so we don't think it would be an advisable safety thing to do to put some boulders to designate the setback area, the 10-foot setback. So we had him do a recommendation on any plants that would be compatible and wouldn't be non-intrusive to the oak tree that is there. The Single Family Design Board had said something about putting a tree here. Duke McPherson has not recommended that for two reasons. One is that this is a very difficult area for the root system to establish itself. Two, there is another oak tree that seems to be kind of been overlooked here at times that is right here, and it would be a competitive situation. It would also undermine the wall here, the retaining wall that's over here, and potential cause damage to the driveway area. And so he does not recommend putting a tree in this area. He does recommend putting agave, which is no irrigation and non-intrusive root systems. And this is his letter that updates and states that. He also stated, so what we would be interested in, this is the area that we don't have any contention with that should be landscaped in this little, what I call the tip of the teardrop shape that's in here. The area that's actually in contention that we would like to have retain some maneuvering space is in this area here. Here's the 10-foot setback. We have no problem landscaping that, so that way there isn't a parking in your setback issue or concern. So we would be happy to remove the gravel out of here and plant the agave as recommended in his letter. Also, his letter said if there is concern, it seems that the oak tree is well established. He said that the root system probably covers a city block. So this small impact area is really basically almost a non-issue. But to mitigate any concern that there would be an impact, he is recommending putting some PVC sleeves into this area for just aeration, so that way there wouldn't be a concern with the root system getting any water, which he said is well below the impact area of any vehicles traveling over it as far as any adverse effect to it. So that's the only area that we have that we would like to bring forward. Also, I guess the other issue to here is that the parking that's here is this driveway is 689 feet long. Now, if they have guests or company or anybody else wants to park here, it's kind of difficult to park all the way out on Grand Avenue and hike on in, which his other neighbors have the convenience of having that here in the cul-de-sac. He doesn't have access to that cul-de-sac for parking for individuals. So that is the only other consideration we'd like to have, and this is just some photographs. I think you've seen this. So this is the teardrop area that would be landscaped. And then it would be just this a little section back in here that we'd ask that just stays to be some gravel for some maneuvering space.
But outside of the setback.
Yeah, it would be outside of the setback, correct.
Okay.
So that's why we would landscape, put the agave, which he recommends would be a non-competitive and non-irrigated plant. And it would be non-destructive to the retaining wall. Once again, just repeat myself on why he adamantly does not recommend a tree going in here.
Okay, now you're talking about it being steep and the boulders rolling away if they get hit. This doesn't look real steep.
Well, okay. Some of the photographs, this is a little bit of a leveled area. If I show you, this is the parking area. This drops off over here. This is part of the wall is up here on the driveway.
Yeah, there's wall there.
Yeah, there are openings in there, just walkway openings in the wall to get to the residents on Grand Avenue and to the health room area. So this is what the slope is just adjacent to that. On the turnout, I think there might be some other.
The turnout or the turnaround?
On the turnout area in here. If there's part of this, you've been out to the site, have you not?
Yes.
So you know that there's a bit of a kilt to this area in here, and so that's part of why we're asking not to have any boulders, especially if you're backing up, you don't see them and you hit them, and the dislodge. Duke McPherson also had mentioned that if we were to put boulders in there that would be sizable, they would have to be dug in several feet into the ground in order to attempt to secure them, which is not, once again, a recommendation to excavate 3 feet into that area.
Okay. Right.
So
great, thank you.
Otherwise, all other conditions, I believe, we're happy with. And
All All right, great, thank you.
Ms. Reardon, this particular proposal has not been reviewed by Single Family Design Board.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. I haven't received any public letters, have you?
I have not specific to the staff report, no.
Okay. I'd like to open the public comment or the public hearing. Is there anyone here who
Yes.
would like to speak on this item? Oh, we have two, right? Okay. Gloria, did you get these to type in? All right. Tony Fisher and Mike Cahill. Tony, if you'd like to come up and have a seat. If you could limit your comments to 3 minutes, would be good.
Okay. My name is Tony Fisher. I'm an attorney. I'm here on behalf of Mike and Linda Cahill. I've been following this project and this property for years. Going back to the prior proposals on 1402 back in 2003, 2004. I probably can't stay within 3 minutes, but I do think I have valuable information that you need to have as part of your evaluation and making a decision on this project. And if we can't get the information in front of you, our only option would be to take it up to the Planning Commission where we get 15 minutes. So, and since you're sitting as a Planning Commission, in effect, and I think the information will be helpful, there are some things in this proposal that are new and therefore maybe need some discussion that you wouldn't otherwise have. Particularly, the new thing is the carport. And we don't necessarily have a problem with the carport. We actually think the staff conditions of approval, as written, mirror the comments of the Single Family Design Board, particularly the boulders, particularly the protection of the drip line of this significant oak, and that those conditions are really essential to carrying out the protection of the oak tree, and I think they're essential to your being able to make a finding of no significant environmental impact or potential, because this is a protected oak in the city's MEA, and therefore these conditions and what the Single Family Design Board was talking about are critical to your being able to approve. And let me now take up another little different subject and why we think it is so important that your conditions of approval be clear and solid, because this property has been used as a hotel and is being used as a hotel. It is a vacation rental, and despite the fact that the property owner has claimed that all of the vacation rentals are limited to 30 days or more, and has put in writing that the property is not available for periods of less than 30 days, I am presenting to you a copy of a package which has been given to the Finance Department regarding the use of this property and being advertised as a vacation rental. Obviously, a lot of the comments you just heard from the applicant as to why they want to not have the boulders and why they want more parking space is not because of the desire to use the property as a single-family home, but to use it as a hotel. Attached to that memo, you will see printouts from the internet, the earliest going back more than a month ago, showing that the property is advertised for rent on a weekly basis. They have weekly prices, they have monthly prices. You also have in there copies showing that it was available in the end of May. And if you went online right now, those ads are still out there, and this property is being advertised as a hotel. You can rent it for a week, you can probably rent it for a day. You also have attached calendars. Those calendars are on the website. They show you what dates it's available in the future. And you can see which dates are not available. And you can see that there isn't a 30-day spread between those dates, which would suggest that it's available for periods of less than 30 days. This has been a bone of contention about this property for some period of time, and I've given you from the street file a letter written by the owner in which he strongly condemns those complainers, one of which was not my client, for complaining about his running the place as a hotel. And he says we don't rent it for periods of less than 30 days. And in fact, they changed the ad for a period of time so it didn't show a weekly rental rate. So that is why it is critical that these conditions be looked at closely and that it be limited to a single family use. And the restrictions that the staff has come up with, the conditions of approval, certainly go a long way to keeping that property from being used as a use other than what would be typical single family, including larger vehicles. There's another aspect about the project that is missing from the drawings. It's my understanding that a tentative map, a proposed tentative map, is supposed to show all existing easements on the property. The preliminary title report lists that there are some lot line easements that were executed at the time that the property owner acquired the property, and there's actually an agreement between the two property owners that has apparently been in effect prior to getting the lot line adjustment approval that allows the 1402 Grand property to travel across the 860 Jimeno property as an emergency ingress and egress. And it's important to understand that yes, it comes down here. So where this, in this area, this is going to continue to be hardscape under the oak tree, which is a problem. It also looks like it'll be a parking place under the oak tree, which will be a problem. Because obviously it's an emergency ingress and egress, limited use, certain things not to be done, but that means this area, under your conditions, should be returned back to something other than hardscape. That raises the other question. Why is this lot line here as opposed to further down? This is the smaller lot. Why are we taking this extra land and adding it to the smaller, taking it from the smaller lot and adding it to the larger lot? We should be removing from the smaller lot as little as possible. And there is no justification for adding all of this. I can understand with your parking arrangement that they're going to need some setback area, so move it 10 feet, but you don't have to go the entire distance. And this land area is, currently designed as part of this. So it would make sense if this line is reduced to down here, this property owner should not be allowed to park in there, and that eliminates that parking under the oak tree.
I'd like to respond to that when I have a chance.
Yeah, you will. Okay.
So that is would make sense to adjust that. We actually like the idea of a carport. I think it's a good suggestion, but there are some potential problems with any carport. We think it would need to establish a height limit so that we don't end up with some view blocker from both the 860 and my client's property. The house has a flat roof, so a flat roof would be consistent with the proposed site. And listening to the discussion of carports from your prior item, you can see that it's possible to have a beam height of 7 feet and probably a maximum height of 8, and that would make a lot of sense right there to minimize it, and obviously a non-reflective surface because the 860 property looks right down over that or on that. There's a there is any currently on the property as part of that easement agreement that was done when it was purchased that includes land area that's now different than these lines. And somebody needs to look at that precisely in terms of how this goes as to whether there's going to continue to be an easement that in effect violates the Subdivision Map Act, which is what it probably did at the time it was put in place. Because they actually entered into an agreement for an easement related to these uses that are now part of the lot line adjustment. And that's probably why 1402 Grand Property took it upon themselves to do all of this work without approvals in advance. The creation of that entire parking area and creation of that new wall, all of which, you know, the Single Family Design Board is trying now to undo and to limit the turnaround area to a small 14 feet well-defined. And again, I'm saying we need to have these carefully spelled out and locked in place because enforcement on this property, as you can see from the memo, is extremely difficult. There seems to be a tendency not to want to get involved with the Allen Block wall, the historical wall, all of those issues. Now, there's another thing I wanted to check, because it is, looking at some drawings, I saw some confusion, and I don't know what this site plan has. And Danny Cato is still here. Okay, this one has it erroneous. If you look at parcel 1 and parcel 2, and when you did the site visit, parcel 2 is 860 Jimeno. You probably saw 2 garages. They're not here.
This has got the wrong steps.
This was reversed. I dropped off 2 sheets that corrected, and I dropped the sheets off that corrected.
I copied it.
Okay.
Wasn't reversed.
Here.
Okay, there's okay.
It's just the stats
but
got flipped.
There's another issue related to that, that grows out of that. When 1402 was remodeled, the house was a 15 or 1600 square foot house. It is now being described as 2412. Mr. Cato told me way back then that he didn't have any ability to go on the property to check out the real size of what's on the site today. I think that needs to be verified because we don't want to have a lot map that has an oversized statement that the house is bigger than it actually is.
This is Jimeno.
This is Jimeno, okay. Here's, okay, 2392, 2400 is the information for 1402, and that appears to be taken off of a drawing which seems to be incorrect, because the old drawings for the house, which was to be restored, showed a 1600 square foot house. So if we're going to be going through all this process, we need to know exactly how big is that house, as opposed to what's written here. And there is the opportunity, as part of this process, to insist on getting that information correct, if nothing else, sending a building inspector out there to get that number locked in. Again, I think the comments about boulders and a little more space and not wanting the tree in that corner are all tied to the need, if you're running a hotel, to have hotel guests, service vehicles, property managers coming and going on a regular basis, and they all need parking spaces. And I don't think you're going to be able to stop 100% of the hotel use. But the information I've given you should go a big way to reducing it. But at this point in time, I think you have to lock in this property as a single-family use and not these other uses which have been ongoing for 5 years. Thank you, and Mr. Cahill probably has just a few comments, and I appreciate the extra time.
Okay. Yeah. So next is Mike Cahill. So now you have 1 minute? No, I'm kidding.
I'm going to make a little pre-comment. First of all, thanks for giving Mr. Fisher the opportunity to get some all-important information to you. The
And
other
you're
thing is-
you're a neighbor?
Well, I'm going to point that out.
Oh, sorry.
to you,
Okay, sorry.
Because
Oh,
I
okay.
think this is material to what I have to say here. First of all, I apologize for this, but I have clients who lost homes in the fire.
That's
as
okay.
well
Can
as-
you make sure you're on the mic?
Oh.
They want to. Yeah.
Clients who lost homes in the fire, and as we did, not our home, but a family home, and so I needed to be available. So I apologize if that went off.
Thank
I
you.
turned it off.
Thank you.
How do I do this and stay on the microphone? But I want to point. Thank you. Our home is at 810. Maybe this right here. We can show this right here. 810 Largura, which is
It's right here.
Okay, right here. We're under the old setback rules, which 10 feet, so we crowd the property line here. And actually, we did not build this house. We bought it from the original owners, and according to our calculations, a portion of the house is actually a little less than 10 feet. My point being is that we have view corridors, which may not be of importance to you, but we have. We've lived in this home for 31 years, and we look at this property. We see this is the what we call the hotel or the vacation rental property. We have it's a direct line of sight from our home, and what I need to do is before I go forward, I need to get a real clarification. Is this the parking area that where the
That's correct.
the garage or the carport is proposed, or is it this one here?
Right here.
Okay, all right. All the more important that Mr. Fisher had stated what was a concern to me is that if you found an approval for this, that this be the minimum height, flat roof, which exactly mirrors this flat roof of this house here. And again, it be a non-reflective flat material because again, we're looking out over into this direction. You can't see it, but there's a porch right here. There's a balcony that we use quite a bit. We can see the sunsets over in here, sunrise over in this area, but the sunsets over in this area. So we use this side of the house quite a bit, and don't want to be getting a glare, off of this. I would also, this piece of the land, I think Mr. Fisher ably discussed some of this, but I don't quite understand why this. I think we need this buffer. I think the odds are not here, as far as I know, to speak for themselves, but I would think, because this is a view corridor for them, I would think that they would want to protect this and retain the ownership of this property so that somebody wouldn't be tempted to, build something into this area, whatever could happen in the future. I can understand this area here for the to get the setback for the garage, for the carport, but this makes no sense at all, and it gives us a buffer. This right now is very nicely planted in kind of an orchard area. It has been from the prior owners, which are the Pedersons, and like I say, we've been here for 31 years, 32 years. Let's see. There is so much more. There's such a bad history in this area. I'm going to reserve because I don't want to sound snarky. But this, go back to this. I'm going to just mention this. It has been, and I think if you look at your files thoroughly, it has been established and documented that there was a beautiful rock wall here that was removed, and we believe that it had and there's some evidence to back that had historic significance. So one of the solutions to solve this rot problem would be to simply to restore the wall that was there. But I thank you. Thank you for the time.
Okay, great, thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to address the staff hearing officer on 1402 Grand Avenue and 980 Jimeno? Seeing no one, and we didn't receive any letters, correct? I'll close the public hearing. I just want to reiterate that in lot line adjustments, my discretion is limited to a review of the consistency of the project with the zoning ordinance and the general plan. And conditions related to any lot line adjustment has to require the resultant parcels to be consistent with the zoning ordinance and general plan. So that would be like minimum lot sizes, setbacks, open yard areas. So zoning related, it's not a full-on discretionary review. It's not a subdivision. There's 2 parcels originally, and as the end result, there's 2 parcels at the end. But I would like, if Danny could come up here and just briefly talk about the zoning issues that were raised in regards to the vacation rental type use, and there's another one, but if you could talk about the wall. What was it?
This wall.
The wall, I think,
That's been visited so many times.
The wall, I think, is a closed enforcement case, isn't it?
Correct.
Okay, so no, not the wall, but related to the. While you're talking, I'll think about what the.
So the vacation, Danny Cotto, senior planner. I'm no longer the zoning and enforcement supervisor, but I was up until about last August, and vacation rentals are an issue that we've been trying to grapple with. This particular property has been a subject of investigation, and actually it's quite a bit like Mr. Fisher had said. They had advertised for stays of less than a month, and we contacted them, and my recollection was they told us that they would change the website and their advertising to advertise for more than 1 month, because if you're for more than a month at a time, then it's just residential, it's not vacation rental. And then they actually did do that. Maybe it's been changed back now, but we don't have a good way of enforcing on vacation rentals. I mean, I guess and this is a discussion we've had with our city attorney, there's not much to do other than go up and knock on the door every day, and see who's there. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it is a problem, and I haven't seen the latest letter, but if if they're advertising for stays of less than a week, then that is a violation of our code.
Now, do you know, is there a zoning compliance declaration against this property? Does that help?
I don't think so. It doesn't really help. The basic zone requirement is for single-family residential use, and it doesn't allow vacation rentals. So, as a zoning compliance declaration, it doesn't.
What about in the instance that there's the house and then there's this health meditation room, is it called? No, health room.
It's called a health room. It's a detached accessory room. It's got a legal full bath in there, but it doesn't have a kitchen. It's permitted. I'm not sure, and it was permitted back in either the 70s or the 80s.
Yeah, it was prior to my client purchasing the property 6 years ago.
It's been there a long time, and I don't think that we've had a complaint about illegal dwelling unit use in that little health room. And I don't think we.
We've seen people anyway. We've talked to people again.
Okay, I've closed the public hearing.
Take the time to read the data that's been given to you, and then you'll know that.
But nevertheless, if it's happening, that is definitely a violation. Of the rental of the health room of it by itself, or although Okay. It's a little bit complicated with the detached health room. Let's say that it was just a single-family residence. Someone could rent that out as a detached bedroom, but it couldn't be a separate dwelling unit. It couldn't have a kitchen in it. Renting the whole thing as a vacation, either or part of the whole thing, is a violation in and of itself. So, I mean, your basic question back was to the zoning compliance declaration. I don't know if they have one or not.
You think it would be necessary in this instance?
It's not a bad idea. There's no reason not to have one recorded. I'm not sure it adds a whole lot to the enforcement toolbox, though. The essential problem is proof that it's actually being rented out, and how do you do that? The discussions that we've had with our city attorney is you can't prosecute someone for advertising. It actually there has to be a violation that is happening in order for us to proceed with enforcement, and proving that is difficult.
Like in the instance of boarding houses?
Correct. I mean, there's a lot of ways that people can be deceptive if they choose to.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you want me to address about the paved finger here for the emergency? What's part of the easement that is mentioned in the lot line adjustment, the title report?
Okay. If you'd like.
I just want to go over that. First of all, this exists currently. Originally, there was an easement for this property because this road didn't exist, and so an easement was, when the lot was split, an easement was created so they would have driveway access to get into the garages, which are located here and here on the understory of the structure here. That was never ever eliminated when Ligura Place went through. That easement stayed on there. Well, that easement has been removed because there's no reason for the Jimeno property to have a driveway easement across the Grand Avenue parcel. So that's been eliminated. That's just logical. Second thing is the fire department has said that if there's a fire, they're not going to come down this road, which will not support really a truck. You've been out there, you know that. They will come straight down here and service and take care of access for this property right through here. So this has to stay paved. The gate is going to be relocated from here to up to here. It's existing right now, and that's just going to be moved there. The other reason why this line is here is I actually originally did an angle to this original point here, and it wasn't recommended by the city because it didn't follow natural topography for a natural adjustment for the lots. And that's why this was straightened out. It more or less follows relatively this topography line. So those are all logical. As far as the orchard, he intends to keep the orchard. There's no reason why. In fact, my client has done some plantings over here. And one last thing I would like to bring up is that I have on 6 occasions driven up to this street. Mr. Cahill's property is here, and I've taken photographs. He actually parks a big Suburban right next to the fence. It has parking setback violations consistently.
Well, that's not
So, that's... I just find it fascinating. Somebody is bringing this up as a concern when they consistently, 75% of the time, do it themselves, and they have parking.
Okay. Well, let's just keep on the subject of the lot line adjustment.
All right. So anyway, I believe those are all the, and once again, on this issue with the tree especially, it's just basically, it's not a recommendation by the arborist. The Single Family Design Board had asked for an arborist to make recommendations. He highly does not recommend a tree in there because of those reasons, to destruction to the driveway, destruction to the retaining wall, and competitive root system to this oak tree that exists right here.
Thank you. Then another question I have is, and Stacy's still here, related to the turnaround area. Okay, there I see. Right here. As we all know, the parking is not allowed within the setback, and so I have a question regarding what would be the minimum turnaround or the minimum backup space turnaround be necessary to get the car going forward.
Oh, this represents the minimum.
Oh, this is the old one? Or this is the new one?
This is
I want the old one.
This is the one that Transportation has approved, and we put their recommendations on there. What our proposal is on this one here. And we're still maintaining what the city's recommended as a hammerhead and turnout. This is non-discussion. We don't have an issue with that. It's only this minimal area in here. We're asking to not park in the setback here, but we're asking if we can have this additional wedge in here.
Okay, so Stacy, what my question is in regards and this is new information that you haven't been able to review.
Correct.
So, in looking at the plans that I had that was submitted, what is the minimum necessary to be able to get this car to head out, to go out of the driveway, backing up? Is it really necessary to have this deep going up to the property line, or?
I may not be able to answer that question because I'm here representing Chelsea Swanson, who was the reviewer, so I'm not prepared to answer about minimums. I know that was worked out. Do you have a sense?
This is a copy of Chelsea's review.
Okay. If I may?
Sure.
Thank you. Okay. Well, I see it identifying two specific areas. Option 1, which I think is what this represents, is option 1.
Correct.
Correct. It's just reduced down to a 14-foot width.
As I understand the proposal that has been brought forward today, it does include, essentially, I would say, generally describe it as both option 1 and 2 together.
Option 2 was to go up into here.
Now, but there's no dimensions here of where the setback is.
This was used, if I can make an interpretation of what that is, I think that's based on using a scale drawing. And we could scale that for dimensions.
My understanding from Chelsea when she did this option 2 was completely outside of the setback.
Now, I don't review parking plans, and I don't have the template or anything. Why is it okay that this one's shorter but it's closer, but this one's deeper and it's farther away? Why couldn't this one be cut off at the setback line too and still get you to go?
Well, I didn't review that myself, so I'm sorry. I didn't know that these questions were going to be asked. If we had known, I would have, we could have prepared that. My sense is it has to do with this paving area. I mean, excuse me, not paving. This is landscaping area.
Right.
So because of this corner as it is shown here, a vehicle generally would have to travel out a little bit farther this direction in order to get past this, to clear this corner. This I see it as a little more gentle, like this is wide here so that you could then immediately make the most severe turn, like turn your wheel all the way to the opposite direction in order to head down the driveway, and that you could make a wide, this feels like that allows for a wider berth.
Okay. All right.
And we'd also, I think if we were to revisit this option here with a carport here and a post here, that dynamic would slightly be changed because of.
Can you say that again?
One thing we have to do is bring it into compliance is to construct a one-car carport.
Yes.
And
well, I heard a different proposal is what I wanted you to go over. You were talking about the location of the posts.
I was just saying, yeah. If this,
I just didn't see your hands.
When Chelsea did this one, there wasn't an issue of a carport being here. So this also in here was based on there being no obstructions to
no vertical
obstructions when you start to cock the wheel. So if you were we're going back towards recommending we use option 2, that issue would have to be revisited because it would be like this and clearing that vertical obstruction with the carport. So that would be a various concern. With this one right here, that's not going to be an issue, but this would have to, option 2 would have to be reanalyzed because of that. Is just my throwing that out there.
Okay.
Ms. Ritter, my understanding is that Chelsea Swanson did review a carport configuration. Is that correct, Ms. Johnson?
Oh, I didn't know.
Correct, with option 1
Okay,
being
thank you.
used, that the maneuver would be able to be done.
Thank you.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, and then in regards to building code consistency, is there an active, Suzanne, an active building enforcement case on Jimeno? I saw Larry walk in here, he left.
There was a determination made when they did the remodeling that they built the building back with the same floor plan, the same approximate room dimensions. I don't know if they were slightly different to get the room square, but the determination was made that it was not a significant change in the square footage that the floor area existed previously when they went out and did the inspections
Is that on Grand
Avenue.
I was going to say that's on Grand, not Jimeno.
So there is not an open enforcement case on that issue.
Well, you had mentioned that Jimeno needed to go to the SFDB for an understory converted. Did you mean Grand then?
No, that was just an error. We have a proposal to convert. Yeah, the dwelling. It's improved space, but we have a proposal to convert it to dwelling space.
Okay, so it's not
It's not an enforcement. No.
Okay, and it's not related to the lot line adjustment.
No.
Okay, I think I remember the other question regarding Danny was one, the zoning compliance, and then the other was the unit size. The discrepancy with the unit size or these match. My information all matches, but the unit size.
I think that's why Larry and Chris were here briefly.
Ms. Sheridan, I don't actually have a good memory of this. I know I did an inspection many years ago on 1402 Grand, and no, it's on. I think it might be a good idea. I'm not sure that we have the most recent plans for the actual 1402 house. I don't know what we have in our archives anymore. But there is an understory. It's a 2-story house with a understory below that, and there was understory that was unfinished, way below. But that's all I remember. I don't have a memory of the square footages involved, and it would.
Well, there hasn't been any work done since we pulled a remodel and upgrade permit on this, and that was like 5-6 years ago. There hasn't been any other work on it since then, and that was all permitted.
And you did a records check in terms of
In comparing the remodel plans to these plans, the numbers were consistent.
Okay.
The floor plans were consistent.
Our issue is
Yeah, nothing's been done to Grand Avenue.
convinced that the actual and the drawings are not consistent, because they couldn't be consistent.
Wait, Mr. Fisher, wait, stop. If you could come up here and get on the mic and just clarify your point on the.
Okay, my point is that the old house, owned by a prior owner, had all kinds of illegal decks enclosed. When the Drevos purchased a property, they removed all the illegal enclosed decks and were restoring the house back to its original size and the original drawings. That would, based on the drawings, because they exist, that would have been a house of around 1,500 to 1,600 square feet. For some reason, the data that's now posted regarding this property has the 23, just about 2,400 square feet for that house. And my claim and question has always been, why not go out and actually measure and see what's there and document what is there, because I don't think the drawings accurately reflect, unless there was an addition done that nobody caught. But at least then we would know that now, based on an actual measurement. And Mr. Cotto probably doesn't remember, but he sent me an email at one point saying, I have no way to verify the size of that house as it sits there because I don't have a basis to go out and measure it. And I always remembered that and said, okay, next time they come in for something to do on the property, it's a time to solve this question. Regarding the health room, the health room is rented out as part of the vacation rental. It's how you get 10 to 12 people able to stay in this single-family house is because they include that as available under the vacation rental, and it's in fact being used that way and advertised that way. And if you look through the material I gave you, it's all neatly described.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And again, that's why we are so concerned about locking in, and there's really no need to add that additional square footage, as much of it, to come up with a workable lot line adjustment that gives them parking that's outside the side yard. And option 2 on the turnaround puts you right under the oak tree, which is where you're not supposed to be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then so the remodel plans that you reviewed, they're approved plans with the city that denote the size of the house?
We looked at the size of the house, yes, and the floor plans they brought in, and they match.
Yeah, I've never heard that's an issue.
I don't see a discrepancy in the plans themselves. However, I don't believe that we've gone out and physically taken off measurements in the house.
Yeah, that's correct. And I think Mr. Fisher's point is that previous plans show about 1,500 square feet or 1,600 square feet, and new plans, which are supposed to be the same building, essentially show quite a bit larger. And what is that discrepancy? I do recall something about this from way back, and it's worth checking again at even scaling off the old floor plans, which we do have.
Yeah. In terms of the lot line adjustment?
Excuse me?
In terms of the lot line adjustment?
Well,
or part of the ABR review or SFDB review?
Probably that would probably be part of the SFDB review. I mean, we could do it as.
Okay. All right. As I said, in regards to lot line adjustments, the review is limited to the resultant lot's conformity with the general plan, the zoning ordinance, and the building code. And in terms of the general plan, the density is consistent with the general plan land use element. And in terms of the lot area in regards to the zoning ordinance with slope density, although the Jimeno property is getting a little smaller, it still meets the minimum requirements. And I can't second guess why the Jimeno property wants to give away, additional land. I don't know. But the resultant lots continue to conform to the general plan and the zoning ordinance, and the increase in size for 1402 Grand Avenue is not significant enough to allow additional development potential. If you just do straight math, not looking at any of the constraints, because the site's highly constrained with the slopes and the vegetation and everything, just straight zoning ordinance division, it's 2.8 lots. And as a result of the adjustment, it's still 2.8 lots. So it doesn't increase the development potential. In regards to other aspects of the zoning ordinance with setbacks in open yard areas, I have concern with the turnaround area, and given the history of the site, the potential for use for parking. And so that was one of the questions I had asked to be able to be answered today, was the depth of the turnaround area, because it concerns me having the turnaround area go all the way into the setback and up to the wall. So my preference would be to have the paved area pulled back as far away from the wall as transportation staff would allow, so that there is no parking in the setback, because it's not an allowed use. And then in regards to a larger area under the tree or smaller area under the tree. Again, my review today is limited to consistency with the zoning ordinance, and you can pave this area. The zoning ordinance doesn't prohibit that. It's a single-family design board issue, and so that wanting to pave that, you would need to work with the single-family design board. I would want a physical barrier, not just landscaping, delineating the setback area. I don't believe that you'd be going fast enough that you're going to knock the boulders and it's going to go rolling down the hill. I have a hard time following that argument. And then in regards to the carport and the height of it, I understand your concerns with the views. And again, the zoning ordinance doesn't limit the height of the carport, but it does require one to be there. So the height of it and the design of it is a single-family design board issue. So when they come forward at the SFDB for the carport, then that's when you should express your concerns regarding the height and that kind of stuff. With this lot line adjustment, I don't have purview over that. I just need to make sure there's a covered space. So I'm inclined to support the lot line adjustment. But again, how far is an overhang, a car overhang from like a wheel stop? How far in? You understand my concerns about parking in the setback. But since we don't know for sure the necessary backup space here, if I say it has to be 10 feet away from this line, a physical barrier, is there some, leeway, or can you help me on that part, Stacy?
I think I understand your question about at the front of a vehicle, how much does, once the tires hit like a wheel stop, how much is a standard overhang? And that's 2 1/4 feet that we anticipate would be from the front of your wheels touching to like the front of the bumper.
Does that translate to your back? If they're backing out to go forward?
Do you have a larger overhang in the rear?
You have a larger. No, actually, our standard vehicle has a larger overhang in the front.
Okay.
And yeah, we don't. Anyway, I don't know. Our code doesn't. Our standards don't make an assumption for the overhang in the rear in terms of maneuvering dimension, but I think we're talking about parking. Is that correct? Okay. And most parking, what we do is assume head in. But what we're talking about is discouraging parking in addition to what would be the approved parking, right?
Right.
A discouraging
use of that area.
discouraging use of the turnaround hammerhead. It's a small hammerhead configuration for parking.
Okay.
Mr. Eden, if I could make a suggestion.
Yes.
Right now you have condition A2, which says the proposed driveway turnaround shall be a hammerhead not to exceed a maximum 14 foot width. And we might want to add some language that says, and the amount of encroachment into the setback shall be the minimum feasible with review by transportation.
Perfect.
Well, and somewhere in some documents, there's a dictate of this being 17 feet. It specifies 17 feet. I originally had 19 feet. So they specify that as
And then there's a possibility of, curving this around so there's easier access. I would say work with the transportation division to have the minimum amount of encroachment possible. I would also say that, zoning staff shares the concern of Mr. Fisher about excess parking and the use of this property as a vacation rental and, having additional paved area that would facilitate that. So I know it's not your purview, but you could send a comment on to the single-family design board if you so chose to note your concern and ask them to act in a way that would reduce the amount of potential excess parking on this lot.
Ms. Reardon, if I may, transportation staff often works to minimize paving as a part of the city's goals and providing drainage and percolation. So if you could provide us that general direction, I think that we could work, if we had some flexibility, we could work to minimize paving.
Yeah, actually, let me clarify.
Or driving areas.
We actually, this is decomposed granite. We actually had opposed paving it, which was an original recommendation. So this is not paved. The original blacktop is over here, and concrete. This is all original. This area in here is decomposed granite. It's aerated. Just as a note, we don't desire to pave it.
And Ms. Reardon, one more thing. We do agree with you that a physical barrier is a necessity. Whether it's boulders, whether it's a 6-inch curb, concrete curb, something to that effect, so that cars can't go over it. But we don't want to have something that, damages cars either. So maybe I don't know if a 6-inch curb is appropriate here, but that might be something that transportation staff could look into.
Ms. Reardon, if you specify what the intention is, we can work with the intention.
Okay.
If the intention is to keep, to provide a physical barrier for vehicles, we can work with that and give recommendations in that arena. I mean, it starts with a 6-inch curb, but sometimes we might recommend something taller, just for visibility for vehicle drivers.
Well, I think I would just leave it as a physical barrier and then leave it up to you and the SFDB and what's most appropriate in this area.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Okay. Then I wrote some, just some clarifications in the conditions. In condition 1, it says, in consideration of the approval granted by the Planning Commission or staff hearing officer, so just cross off Planning Commission. Was this arborist report date meant to be left blank in condition IA9B, or is that this one?
The original date of the report prior to the SFDB, I believe, was March 26, 2009. The SFDB specifically gave direction to the applicant to get some feedback on plantings underneath the oak tree, and so this is revised as of April 16th with that Duke McPherson's feedback. So I was going to put the 4/16 date in here.
Well, this talks about
the original report that we were reviewing this under was the March 26, 2009 date. I do have that in the file.
This though talks about increasing the area for parking.
There's 2 points. One point is this area here. I believe that's on point 1. Just he's saying he does not recommend a tree. He recommends agave instead because of the intrusion to the root system, etc. The second point, I believe, is in relation to if we were to have this portion outside that 10-foot remain gravel, that's what his recommendation is, and so those are those 2 different points. Obviously, if we still landscape this whole area, his recommendation is there is agave, non-competitive, irrigation not needed.
Okay, so this says, to better ensure that parking does not incur within the setback, it has been suggested that the area be planted. I recommend that non-root invasive planting, which needs little irrigation water, be used, such as agave. Okay. Okay, all right. And then regarding, what was your proposed changes?
Sorry. The condition B3, recreational vehicle storage limitation.
I think that's okay to remain. That's consistency with the zoning ordinance.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay.
What about number B2, uninterrupted flow of water. Like I said, conditions need to relate to conformity with the zoning ordinance, the general plan, or building codes. And so when I review the conditions of approval, I'm looking, although I know you don't have an issue with them, I'm limited on how I can condition them. So I'm looking through these just to see which ones really are necessary. So in regards to B2, that one's not a code, insurance consistency with the code. And I had a question regarding B5 on page 3, the geotechnical liability limitation. Is that related to the carport, which is necessary for zoning compliance? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. And then C1, that's, we already have, the city's already asserted their rights. This is more putting property owners on notice that we, right, so that one could go.
Yeah, I don't think that was.
And design review is appropriate because of the carport. Okay, so and then we're putting the other condition with the design review under A. And then number 3, on page 4, number D3. That's not a code requirement, right?
It's
Is
not
it?
a zoning ordinance or general plan.
Okay, so that one goes. And then for Jimeno, if they're not doing any construction, why are you proposing 1A?
The physical tree is actually located on 860 Jimeno's property, above the wall.
Okay.
Actually, there's another one here.
There's 2 oaks, but this one specifically is
been more in contention.
Okay. So we're related to this stuff. Okay, that's fine. And again, on the first page of the Jimeno conditions, B2, that one could go. So is that why 4 is here?
Correct.
B4?
That is correct. About the
And
tree.
then, okay, so B5 goes. C1. Okay, then building permit requirements. What's building permit here for Jimeno Road?
Exterior changes to the understory.
Correct.
But that's change a window to a door.
To a door. 6-foot window to a 6-foot pair of doors. That's for the Yobs, not for the Drevos.
Is that zoning ordinance?
Yeah.
Okay. And then, Gloria, there's a couple other ones where it says Planning Commission that needs to be changed to show staff hearing officer. I see one on page 505, number F. That should be. No, that's fine. Planning Commission is fine because if it's appealed to the Planning Commission and the City Council, it's just on the first page of the resolution for Jimeno, or of the proposed conditions of approval, that Planning Commission's in there.
So we make a choice.
Okay, so do you understand the changes that and you're fine with them?
Yes.
Okay. So I make the findings outlined in the staff report and approve the project subject to the conditions of approval as I just amended. And we're going to beef up the conditions in A1 to give direction to the SFDB and to transportation staff to reduce the paving and the decomposed granite to the minimum necessary to discourage access parking and to provide the physical barrier to reduce the potential for additional parking. And so give that direction to work with the SFDB and then also transportation staff, again with the intent of keeping parking out of the setback and reducing the area, the disturbed area.
Yeah, I might mention this also. we would also need to look at this a little bit. This is just occurring to me. If a carport comes into here, if for emergency access, I need to have the fire department review that, or we'd have to look at this if the post over into here. I guess that would be a structural thing.
You
I'd
can
have
put a
to try and
post back in
offset
this
something
area,
back into,
but
if I
I
set
don't know
back
how-
it to here and this one out here.
The clearance of the
So
bottom
I'll have
of
to
the
check.
projecting structure would have to be
Yeah,
cleared
so
with
that's all
fire.
going to have to be reviewed and coordinated with them. I'm just making that as a comment
Okay.
for emergency access for them.
So I've approved the project, and this application is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days. And also, they have the oversight authority of all my actions, and if they believe this warrants... Oh, you know what? I also wanted... Is it too late? Can I amend my motion? I wanted to also put a condition in there that the size of the existing units be verified prior to SFDB. So if that could be in here, so that discrepancy...
Yeah, when I met the house, I just measured it.
Okay. So, we'll-
So that's all that I did. I documented what was physically standing there when he got it. And
Okay,
I-
so you can work with Suzanne on that. And then I also do want a zoning compliance declaration recorded against 1402 Grant. I kept wanting to say Jimeno. I knew that was wrong. Grant. Okay, so with that, like I said, you know, you guys were talking, there's a 10-day appeal period to the Planning Commission, and they also have an oversight authority that they review my actions, and if they believe this calls or warrants additional discussion by them, they can call it up too.
I understand.
Okay.
Thank
great,
you.
Thank you. And I adjourn the meeting.